Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to another episode of Scandal Queens. It is me, EB, and we are going to be diving into a juicy topic. If you're a Real Housewives fan, this has been all over your radar. It's been all over social media, all over the tabloids, and that is the big question that all the Real Housewives fans are asking themselves. Is the Real Housewives of New Jersey canceled? Now, here's why I'm covering this specifically, right? Because the show getting canceled itself is not a scandal, but here's what I think is. I think potentially what we're seeing, this crash in not just the Real Housewives of New Jersey, but kind of across the franchises, is a result of toxic personality. It's a great example of how ego forces a crash and forces these huge kind of warped and toxic dynamics between individuals. I think that's certainly at play in what's going on in New Jersey, what's going on behind the scenes, what's led to the canceling of the reunion, and what could possibly, if they can't get their egos in check, lead to the end of the Real Housewives of New Jersey as we know it. So if you're curious about that, if you want to dive in, we're going to be talking scandals, we're going to be talking personalities, and we are going to be talking about the mess behind the Real Housewives of New Jersey. So buckle up. It's going to be another juicy episode, and you're not going to want to stop talking about it. So here we go. So for me, if we are looking at kind of the downfall of Jersey, as it were, I think we really have to start at the top, right? A kind of last in, first out, superficial top layer analysis. And for me, that starts at the new personalities on the show. Jersey has had a lot of different personalities come and go. You know, Teresa is the only member of the original cast who's still on the show. And I think in recent years, the fit has maybe not gone as well as some of the others, right? Like Melissa, whether you like her or hate her, she has fit into the cast and the storyline is what it is. But these new additions, I think, have kind of been a bad fit. And it comes down to a lot of it is these like toxic behaviors and these toxic personalities. Like it or not, again, I think you can point to the Fudas first and foremost. Rachel and John Fuda have introduced a really, really aggressive, hostile dynamic to the show. John, I think, is the biggest part of the problem. He's very, very aggressive. He's always looking to place himself into the middle of the drama, get as much screen time as possible. He gives off this really like aggressive, old school machismo, like shitty kind of personality with it. And I think he's created a lot of problems for Rachel. Rachel backs him up, right? Like she goes and she gets just as aggressive as him. I don't think we've ever seen the real Rachel Fuda because it's all just been focused on John and the drama around John. And John seems to love it, right? Which, as I've explained, like wanting to be in the public eye in the way that he is, you know, going and getting his teeth done and getting lip filler and getting liposuction and getting himself on Ozempic and all of these things and being all over social media and all over the episodes. It points to a personality that really craves attention, that really enjoys being in the spotlight. And as we know from any sane housewife that we've talked to, it's not pleasant. Right? They get a lot of hate. There's a lot of negativity that comes with this role. So for someone to crave attention so much, enjoy it so much, despite all the negativity that comes with it, it kind of points to maybe a more negative oriented personality type. And for me personally, in my opinion, that's what you see. So we've got Rachel and John who've just kind of created this nasty negativity, and it's this kind of high stakes negativity as well. It's like aggression and fist fighting and nastiness. It feels like when you're in an abusive home and your parents and your family member always just scream and yell and fight, and you get super nervous or anxious when you have to be around family events. It's like that. It's too high stakes tension, too high stakes drama, too high stakes aggression. You know, it's not like the old days of Housewives, and we'll get into that because I think that's another big problem that most of the franchises are suffering with at the moment. But we definitely have this really bad fit with Rachel and John Fuda. They've just attracted kind of bottom feeder personalities to the fandom who kind of see their aggression as permission to be aggressive themselves. And they've kind of muddied the waters of fandom, because like Twitter Housewives fandom used to be quite fun. It was very fun. Everybody watched the episodes and live tweet them and have kind of like fun drag queenie back and forth. But now it's become this really hostile place where people are doxing each other, the fans, online, and attacking each other at the workplace and like really weird stuff. And the Fudas have kind of fed into this, right? Because the way people behave on TV is what they kind of give their fans permission to do. So it's this kind of bottom feeder culture. Like the Fudas are just like cheap bottom feeders, essentially, is what it feels like. They flaunt a lifestyle that feels flimsy and fake. Like they skip a couple of episodes and they can't afford that house anymore. And it's just not a nice layer. We've seen that a little bit with Danielle as well, right? Like her first season, I was quite into Danielle. I quite liked Danielle. I thought she was funny. I thought she was scrappy. But again, I think she's just proven to be a bad fit. And it feels like she's trying to force more of that high stakes drama, more of that aggression that's not so funny as it is. It feels intimidating. It feels dark. It feels like, these toxic families that so many of I've talked about on TikTok and on Medium and on my Substack. So there's like this uncomfortable fit with Danielle. I think Danielle is a nice person, which I don't necessarily feel about the Fudas. I think she and her husband are nice. I think they've got sweet kids. It almost feels like she's forcing herself to behave that way. Like she thinks that's what the fans want to see. And again, because so many bottom feeders have been now attracted into this fandom, she probably is getting encouraged to behave that way. But it's created this nasty, toxic culture. And people say, oh, well, housewives have always been toxic. Yes, but it was low stakes toxicity, right? It's what I kind of call like country club antics. Like on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, when Dorit was like, oh my goodness, she didn't use a champagne glass. She gave me champagne in a wine glass, not a champagne glass. Low stakes, petty nonsense drama that doesn't matter. It doesn't actually affect people outside of the show. It doesn't trigger people put them in places that they're experiencing in their own real lives, right? Because I think that's a problem that so many of these new girls have added to New Jersey, and it's something that Teresa and Joe and Melissa have also contributed to. And it's these toxic family dynamics. It's people want to watch reality TV for like petty escapism, not to see their own lives on display. So many of us have toxic relationships with our families. We don't want to see toxic, nasty, mean-spirited, vindictive, narcissistic behaviors when we're doing escapism. We just want funny, petty antics. And unfortunately, the new girls, I think, have kind of gone beyond that and helped push New Jersey. And I'm not saying they're entirely at fault. We're going to get into the other ladies who have contributed as well. But I think these new additions have been a bad fit and have kind of pushed the energy of the show in a direction that, frankly, it's just not really entertaining anymore. Now, to me personally, you can't have a conversation about the downfall of Jersey and the mess that they're in right now without having a conversation about, and I know this is going to make some of you so mad, Dolores Catania. Okay? Dolores Catania. Now, again, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think this is a surface thing, but what I think we've seen, and I just recently rewatched the whole thing from start to finish, from before Dolores all the way to the current episodes. And I think there's a turning point when you get Dolores and Siggy, and then Dolores holds on throughout the seasons. I think that I call it the island of Dolores. Dolores has flip-flopped so many times, and we've seen her become a very ego follower of whoever the meanest girl in the room is. Like whoever the biggest bully is in the room, who she thinks has the most power, is going to be the most popular. That's the person that she sides with. We saw her with Siggy, who was absolutely just repugnant, like just disgusting behavior. She's continued her disgusting behavior outside of the show, which then makes me question Dolores's morals and values and alignments to things. But Dolores has shown herself very willing and easily flippable and willing to kind of change between sides. When Danielle was reintroduced, there was some rumors that she had said things to Danielle about Teresa, and frankly, her overreaction to those rumors made me question. It feels like she was talking behind Teresa's back, and it does feel like the show trumps everything to Dolores. To me, Dolores is the Ashley Darby of New Jersey. She is faithful to no woman. She always is going to center and choose a man. There's very like pick me behaviors in her. And she's not loyal. She has no faith with her friends. She is going to side with a man always, no matter how wrong he is. And she will always choose the woman that she thinks is going to be the winner. I think in that last confrontation we saw with Marge, there was evidence of that again. Dolores's reaction to Marge saying, "You knew about that meeting," was over the top. It was way too big for what it was, which makes me think someone who's trying to cover their ass. Frankly, I do think Dolores knew. We know that she's been friends with Margaret, with the Marge, and she's been very close with her, and she's supported her and gone to bat for her when Marge has been wrong. I think she absolutely flip-flops, but she exploded in that moment because she knew she was caught on camera. She knew things had gotten so tense with the cast that she could not afford for Teresa to be turned against her, because Teresa's gonna be fine no matter what. She is such a staple with Bravo that she's gonna get a spinoff, or she will be in the next chapter of New Jersey, whatever that ends up being. So I think Dolores was very much playing to the winning side once again. And I think in that behavior, and we have no proof of this, I have no proof of this, but seeing someone who's willing to flip-flop and go behind and be involved in drama and not admit to it, that to me is a pot stirrer, potentially. A big, big pot stirrer. And that's like what I'm talking about with the Fudas and with Danielle. It's this kind of turn, this flip of making things nastier, of making things more high stakes when they don't have to be, disrupting friendships behind the scenes when they don't need to be disrupted, acting as a go-between, just mean girl kind of antics behavior. And I think Dolores gets way too much of a free pass for that. Way too much of a free pass for the kind of behaviors that she's exhibited. Her mentality towards women is not great. She was really nasty to Jackie when Jackie first got introduced, strictly because Jackie had a more modern relationship. She does tend to side with men in a very misogynistic way, quite frankly. I think she's got this really like harmful women are second best old school mentality, which is, it could indicate a person who has other leanings that are not so great. Right. And who definitely is not a friend to women, who's not loyal to women. So I think there's something to be said about the chaos that Dolores has probably whipped up behind the scenes. And it's something that's got to be talked about more if we really want to analyze how personalities, how these toxic manipulative behaviors have led to the downfall of something that should have otherwise just been kind of a fun means of escape and income for people. Now, again, I know that this is going to be a bit of a controversial opinion, but as we dig deeper into these personalities and these behaviors and how they've kind of ruptured the seams of like an otherwise, again, low stakes show, we have to look at Jen Aydin. Now, I want to preface this conversation, but I'm not at all saying that Jen Aydin is an innocent victim in all of this. Okay. Jen has shown her own willingness to egg things on, to escalate situations, and to certainly behind the scenes go digging for information that's harmful. That's, again, that high stakes, mean spirited drama. I want to preface everything I'm about to say with that. However, I do think that there have been some very blatant racist behaviors that have been kind of pointed towards Jen Aydin, and there's definitely been microaggressions that have been pointed towards her. I think Margaret has had it out for Jen from day one. Now, I don't know what that is, but if you go back and watch the Oklahoma episode. That's where it all kind of seems to start. Marge gets annoyed with Jen being braggy and snobby at her friend's house. And like, again, petty country club, superficial crap. But I think from that second on, Marge decided she wanted to destroy Jen, and she goes after Jen from that point forward, just from Jen bragging about her bathrooms in her house to wanting to expose Jen's marriage, which she does consistently from that Oklahoma scene on. Marge escalates it. Now, even in that fighting, Marge makes comments that I think are microaggressions, because out of all the fights that Marge has had with everybody else in the cast, she has not said what she said to Jen, which was she called her, she said, your lips look like a monkey's asshole. Now, in the reunion, Marge doubled down and said, well, that's the first thing that came to mind, like a monkey. And for me, to use that term for the only brown person that's on the cast, pretty problematic, and no one wanted to address that. And when you look at that coupled with the absolute onslaught, like, how do you go from being insulted that someone's rude to your friend about their house and living in Oklahoma? How do you go from that to, I'm going to expose infidelity so that your children become heartbroken and your marriage is threatened? Do you see how imbalanced that is? So again, I'm not excusing anything Jen did. It was not right for her to behave the way she did in Oklahoma. She has escalated fights, made them more aggressive than they had to be, gotten physical with Melissa multiple times. She got physical with Danielle. I'm not excusing any of those things, but I think there has just been this, again, it's this nasty undercurrent that's exposing these darker sides of these ego-based personalities. I'm not going to call them narcissists, even though Andy Cohen sat on stage and said, I think we're all narcissists, talking about himself and anybody, any housewives. But having that kind of vendetta against someone of, I'm going to destroy your marriage and your family because you bragged about how many bathrooms you had and said that my girlfriend's house was shitty. It's not an equal response, right? Marge could have just gone on an offensive, insulting her house. Your furniture looks cheap. Who goes to China? She could have done that. She didn't. She decided to try to expose Jen's marriage season after season until she successfully detonated it. And again, that points to some behaviors with Marge, who we're going to get into in just a second, who I think has undermined this between Marge, Louie, and Teresa. I think they have been kind of the foundation to the destruction of this show. But this darker undercurrent, which goes from the aggression of the Fudas, the pettiness of Danielle and her like forced tough girl attitude, all the way down till we start getting to, I'm sorry, I do think Jen has gotten racist and unfair treatment at the best, microaggressions directed at her, which have also fed the over-the-top response to her petty behavior, which again, that's the kind of stuff that we used to tune in to watch these shows for, right? That those petty country club antics. In that Oklahoma episode, when it's Jen's first, her first season, when she's like bragging about bathrooms and complaining about Oklahoma, that's the kind of stuff Vicky did with no repercussions, right? Like a couple of people sent annoyed tweets, but no one was like, oh, what a disgusting human being is for Vicky insulting Oklahoma and how terrible it is. But Jen doesn't, and she got absolutely crucified, and people still bring it up, and Marge set out to destroy her relationship because of it. That's a huge red flag for me against Marge, like 100%. And if we're going to be fair, if we're going to be honest, we have to address all of that. We can address Jennifer's problems and at the same time address the fact that she has not been treated fairly by production or by the cast. Now, we're getting down to the kind of what I kind of think is the bottom of this shit pyramid that has led to the demise of the Real Housewives of New Jersey. And I think the Marge is a big piece of that. I don't think that can be ignored. Margaret Josephs, when she first came onto the show, she was refreshing. She was a breath of fresh air. She felt like, this real, I started from the bottom, now I'm here, self-made, strong, independent, forthright woman, right? Like what you saw is what you got. That's what she seemed like. That has not been the case with Margaret. Now, on the show, she's tried to maintain that storyline. I'm this poor, honest, and open friend. I work hard, and I've struggled with money because life's unfair, and oh, woe is me. Teresa is mean to me. But if you go and just do a quick Google on Margaret Josephs, it paints an entirely different picture. First of all, behind the scenes, off screen, which she has never bothered to talk about on screen, she has been subject to lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. She and her husband apparently borrowed $165,000 to finish the repairs on their home. They didn't pay for it. So they got taken to court and they got found guilty. The judge said, you have to pay back this $165,000, which it looks like has maybe not happened. She also got sued by Vineyard Vines, her business, for copying one of their trademarks, which has been around forever, right? I've heard of Vineyard Vines. I've never heard of the Margaret Josephs collection. She got sued by them. They settled out of court. She was supposed to pay them, I think, $300,000 and then $150,000. Guess what Marge did not do? She didn't do that. So Vineyard Vines took her back to court and she got found liable to have to pay another $500,000 for court fees and reneging on the settlement and yada, 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 yada. She also just got sued for $20,000 by one of their accountants and she settled. She just quietly settled it for a cash payment over Venmo, which is very telling because when she got that lawsuit, she said, we're going to go to court and this is going to be dismissed. When you see the documents, this will be dismissed. And then she settles. So there's a lot of really shady financial and legal stuff going on behind the scenes with Margaret Joseph, yet none of that has ever come onto the show. None of that has ever come onto the show. Instead, what we have seen is Marge kind of establish this supremacy over the cast. And I think it has to do with off the screen wheeling and dealing. Because why have none of these financial scandals of Marge's ever been brought up on the show? Why haven't, like, there's literally, if you go and look, there's like 5 outstanding lawsuits or something, or 5 recently settled lawsuits that she's been involved in. Like, it's a big red flag, and none of that has ever been brought up on the show. And in light of recent revelations, what Teresa has said about the subpoenas, what we saw in this like weird finale, her admitting and then lying about talking to Louis's exes and things, it now makes me feel as though perhaps Marge has leaned into this Louis slander campaign because it detracts from the numerous legal troubles that she's involved in, right? Because it's way easier to talk about Teresa and Louis than it is to talk about all the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that you owe while you're getting facelifts, boob jobs, liposuction, getting a Missoni upholstered couch and wallpaper, and getting your whole house redone in the ugliest marble that's ever been conceived, right? There's just endless scandals. And I think that these behind the scenes scandals in some way has been used as leverage to kind of create this supremacy over the cast, to pull strings behind the cast, to pull strings in the media, to pull strings on social media in the fandom, which, as we know, creates a ton of problems for these housewives in their real day-to-day lives, in their jobs, in their children's school, like all of these things, right? It's all attached. And I, again, feel as though Marge is a huge contributor to this nastiness, to the escalations of chaos behind the scene that have now ruptured to this point that they can't even work together. They can't even sit in the same room together to break bread, which is just absolutely absurd. I thought they weren't allowed to sue each other. But again, it's a red flag. It points to this kind of ego-obsessed personality. Like, you're having all these money troubles and you're going and getting facelifts and getting your whole entire house redone. It's problematic, and it's problematic that she's so willing to focus on everyone else's drama, but never speak to her own. Because, you know, that would harm her ego. That would embarrass her. That would humiliate her. So she won't expose that part of herself. So there's no reality with Margaret Josephs. There is nothing behind that. What you see is what you get. That has all been a very carefully cultivated image, which then begs us to ask, well, if that's an image that you've carefully crafted to project to us, why have you done that? Because if you were a genuine person that had nothing to hide, you wouldn't need to craft an image that you project to the world. Second of all, what are you hiding? Because if we assume you crafted that to hide, what are you hiding? And it turns out It's 1,000,001 lawsuits and a direct tank of the energy of the show, creating these high stakes, exhausting, nasty dynamics, which have gotten to the point now that we can't even see the cast all together in one shot. Where then do I think the biggest problem lies? What do I think has kind of laid the foundation for the crash of the show? For me, it is the 4 pillars of the problem has been Melissa and Joe, and then Teresa and Louis. And let me explain. Now, with Melissa and Joe Gorga, I think there's a similar thing that's happened as with Marge, where they would rather bring things like Teresa's issues to the surface and attack Teresa and kind of aggravate the family issues rather than confront their own issues, right? Because as we know with Joe and Melissa, there's been endless lawsuits and accusations made and lots of things from the past that have come up, and none of those like serious things are ever brought to the show. It's always very focused on, Melissa's clothes or her songs, and then how much the Giudice side of the family hates them, right? That's always been the storyline. I think that toxic family, that fighting constantly between Teresa and Joe and Melissa and Teresa, I think that has turned people off. I think it's turned a lot of fans off because what did I say? So many of us have our own toxic families at home. We don't want to watch season after season of what we've already lived through. We look at the Housewives for escapism, for lifestyles that we don't live, for, again, petty low stakes drama that maybe some of us can't have in our lives because there's too much high stakes drama, too much stress, that kind of stuff, trauma. Those warped, toxic, the family infighting, it's just a turnoff. It's exhausting and it's a turnoff. I do think it serves that purpose as a distraction, right? Which is kind of sad, and it points to these personality hints that I see, right? Because who would rather go on there and sacrifice family dynamics than just like be real and confront their own issues and things that are going on behind the scenes? I 100% think Melissa has helped perpetuate that drama. You can see in her first season, there's a little kind of irritation going on between Teresa and Joe, and her first solution, she jumps in there and is like, well, that's it. You should just stop talking to them. We should just cut them off and be done with it. And she really leaps to that recommendation all the time, right? So I don't think that she has been the martyr that she says she is, trying to like paint peace between the families. And I'm not saying Teresa is innocent either, right? We've seen Teresa be insanely stubborn and she doesn't listen to anybody, and she has a hard time taking accountability for things that she does wrong, and communication completely out of the window. But there's been for sure perpetuation by Melissa and Joe to keep these warped family dynamics going. And it's nasty, right? It just gets to a point where who wants to watch that? And if you actually go and look at the fandom, you hear that over and over again of people being like, I'm fighting with my brother. I don't need to watch someone else fight with their brother. This is so tired. Can we have a different storyline? But that was the only one that they wanted to push. Now, within that, I also think there has been a huge rupture since Teresa has taken on Louis and brought him into the fold, right? And it's a very confusing one because a storyline about Louis has definitely been leaned into, right? Which is he's this super machismo, abusive, narcissistic manipulator. He's like the face of the devil is basically how he's been painted. But what we're seeing now that's coming out, especially in some of these accusations from the ex Vanessa in particular, who is terrifyingly a licensed clinical social worker, that may not be entirely true. He was accused of behaviors with that ex, which now seem to be completely the opposite. It looks like Vanessa was the one who escalated things, who did most of the harassing, the intimidations, the threats, the mental and emotional abuse. So that's painted Louis in a little bit of a different life, even down to that Warrior video, right? Which was a part of all this. We see that again in this recent scandal, quote unquote, that's happened where Teresa and Louis were on a podcast talking about the kids, and a comment that he made about the girls being allowed to express themselves, dress however they want to, experience their youth was totally misconstrued by the people that hate him and turned into, oh, look, Louis is a pedophile, because in this conversation, they were basically, he and Teresa were both saying they just told their girls to go out, have fun, live in your bodies, experience yourself, wear what you want to wear, do what you want to do, because when you're older, you'll regret not having those experiences. So go and sow your wild oats, right? Rumspringa. And that's been taken by the fans and warped and twisted to try to paint Louis as a pedophile. So when you see these two big instances in which things have been weaponized against him in a really horrifically damaging way, it makes you question everything else that we've been told about him. Now, all the same, Louis has been a catalyst in this cast for really toxic off-screen behaviors, with Marge in particular. Marge seems to have a vendetta against Louis. Now, does that give credit to what she's accused him of? I don't know. I don't think we can trust anything that Marge says. She proved in the final episode that she was willing to lie. She's proved to us time and time again that she's willing to lie and hide things about her life that she doesn't want people to know, so that they will think a certain way about her. It's very manipulative. But Louis has absolutely served as a catalyst for this rupture. And I don't know if it's a clash of personalities. I don't know if it's for control. Seeing the way Marge has really become fixated on him. And it doesn't make sense, right? She said, oh, it's because he called my son at work. Well, Danielle called into question all of your children and the fact that you hate her. And Marge didn't go to the extent that she is trying to go off screen legally to kind of, or not even legally, just using the fandoms and the blogs to really try to destroy this man in the public eye. And it just makes you wonder, because what do we know about narcissistic personalities? If you're someone who's listened to me talk about narcissists, or you read the stuff that I write about narcissists, it's that when they are exposed, they have to destroy. When someone sees them for what they are, they have to destroy them. And what is the one thing Louis has said basically since day one being on the show is that he sees exactly what Marge is. And so there's a part of me that wonders if Marge hasn't been in the market to destroy Louis, even if it means destroying herself and the show in the process, to kind of keep her secrets buried. Because it seems like Marge does use the press, does use the fandom, does use the blogs to kind of orchestrate attacks. She likes to seed information. And why? Like, why would you need to destroy somebody if everything he says about you is not true? Yada, yada, yada. So I think there is some kind of crazy, intense, toxic, manipulative personality dynamic going on behind the scenes, which has really been whipped up into the next gear by the addition of Louis to the cast. And we'll probably never know. I wish Teresa, if you ever listen to this and you want to come on and tell the truth about what's going on, you know, hun, please, I'm letting you, I'll let you tell your side of what's going on. There's something twisted has certainly happened there. And I feel like for those of us who are just nosy or curious, it could, if we had all the details, I think it would paint such a more complete picture of who some of these women are on the cast, specifically Marge, maybe even Melissa, maybe even Dolores, that would completely change our perspective of them. Because for sure, you don't have to work this hard to destroy a man if he's that big of a piece of shit. If Louis was as terrible as they said he was, they would just need to let him out himself. The show is very good at letting people expose themselves, so why are they working so hard to destroy him? I don't know. It's a question that I would like to have answered, but it doesn't look like it's going to get answered anytime soon, since it has been said that no filming will be taking place until 2025. And even when that happens, it could happen with an all-new cast, or a significantly changed cast, or not at all. So what do you think? Is this the end of the Real Housewives of New Jersey as we know it? Have the scandals just become too much and too great for the cast to carry on? It's a problem we're running in across the franchises. It's not just a New Jersey problem. We're seeing this in Beverly Hills. We're seeing it in the OC. We're definitely seeing it in Potomac. It's a strange time, and these are strange dynamics we're seeing as social media becomes a big part of this kind of social experiment of housewives, as we get new faces, younger faces who kind of have a different perception of the world. So what do you think? Is this going to be the end of New Jersey as we know it? Do you think it will come back with some kind of new face? Here's a bigger question. Do you think toxic, narcissistic, ego-based personalities are what's kind of led to the demise of this franchise? I would love to hear your thoughts, so let's have a discussion. Hit that button at the top of the episode if you want to send me a text. You can also find Scandal Queens on TikTok and on Instagram at Scandal Queens Podcast. And of course, you can follow Scandal Queens on Apple, on Amazon, on Spotify, and anywhere else that you listen to your podcast. But let's open it up. Let's have a conversation. Get on TikTok, shoot off your thoughts, and don't forget to share this episode. I want to know what you think. For everyone else, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And until next time, keep your heads up and keep your eyes on the stars. Keep moving forward. Bye-bye.